Soldier, starring Kurt Russell. I believe this is a 1998 movie, and some have said this is actually not exactly a sequel, but it takes place in the same universe as Blade Runner. So you can imagine this kind of sort of happening within the kind of the same universe as Harrison Ford running around as Blade Runner. But this focuses on Kurt Russell, and he is basically a soldier who was one of many kind of people who were taken from birth and literally from the day they were born trained in nothing else but military combat and treated in the harshest of conditions to become the ultimate killing machines with literally nothing else on their mind, no interests, no desires, no emotions. Basically, we have a kind of a montage of basically what these kind of kids go through until they kind of reach adulthood, and then we find out that these guys are actually going to be replaced with these kind of newer breed which have been genetically enhanced. Anyway, it turns out that Todd, who basically is Kurt Russell's character, ends up in an accident and kind of is discarded literally in the trash and ends up on a junk planet where he kind of finds this kind of group of survivors who end up sort of taking him in and kind of indoctrinating him into their kind of community, at least to some degree. However, for really convoluted reasons, we find out this kind of group of newer genetically enhanced soldiers are going to basically come to this junk planet and end up having sort of a combat situation, a little mini war with this kind of one lone soldier played by Kurt Russell. So this is an interesting film in the fact that it's a little bit like Judge Dredd, Mad Max, is that Kurt Russell plays this character completely stoically. I mean, he barely has any lines. So if you like things like Mad Max or Conan, he's that sort of type of character, really just a man of action. So it's a difficult situation in a way, having to trying to have a character interact with other characters, other cast members, who really doesn't say anything, who really shows sort of no emotion. And I quite like it in a way, because it almost, even though Kurt Russell plays this guy with really kind of no emotion, and he's just sort of reacts very kind of efficiently to whatever sort of situation comes in his head, you still kind of end up kind of empathising with him. So I actually quite like that. He ends up kind of having a bit of a relationship and a romantic subplot is kind of hinted at, but never really sort of goes anywhere with this kind of with one particular woman and a sort of little boy. Now, the issue here, I think, is just I think it comes across as just a little bit cheesy and silly. It's a fun movie. But like I said, I mean, the reasons for this sort of these group of enhanced soldiers to go on this junk planet, which has literally no significance in the grand sort of scheme of things, is so convoluted. I mean, they're just going there for training, but they don't expect to find really anyone. But it's a really sort of like silly reason why these kind of these sort of soldiers end up sort of fighting each other. It's just ridiculous. And I have to say, some of the set pieces also are kind of a little bit silly. We have a bit of a montage, really, sort of in the first part of the movie, showing sort of Kurt Russell's character, going through various different wars. And there's one scene, for example, where he's on the moon, and it looks ridiculous. It looks ridiculous. And then we kind of go into the later battles and stuff, where Kurt Russell essentially is having to take out all of these advanced soldiers. And in the beginning of the movie, we're shown that these guys are like so much more efficient and better than the kind of the older soldiers, if you like, but he just seems taken them with so ease, and they just seem like cannon fodder a lot of the time. It just says, well, hang on, weren't you just telling us that these guys were so much better? Yet they seem to just fall apart when push comes to shove. It's hinted at, admittedly, that these guys maybe aren't as as intelligent, perhaps, or they're not quite has the experience that Kurt Russell does, but I did think they come across as a little bit almost stormtrooperish in the fact that they're so ineffectual. Basically, he has this kind of one rivalry with one of them, Kane, who is played by Jason Scott Lee, who's, I guess, the sort of the big bad in a way. You've also got supporting characters here. For example, Busey's in it, Gary Busey. And he's kind of one of the military sort of pompous bureaucrats, along with a bunch of other ones as well. You know, it's a kind of this really is a definition of just a kind of an action film where you can kind of just switch your brain off. And there's a couple of sort of small nuances where I kind of enjoyed it, but for the most part, it is really cheesy. And watching it now, it comes across like a real B-movie film, even though it was actually a theatrical film upon its release. But it does come across as such a kind of a B-level film now. Now, if you think about that, when it kind of, like I said, the original point here, this apparently is meant to take place in the same universe as Blade Runner, but Blade Runner is obviously a sophisticated science fiction and film with intelligence. Well, this one is really just a kind of a dumb actioner. I can't really see the two marrying up, to be honest with you. That's not to say that this one hasn't got its kind of fun points, and I actually quite enjoyed it despite its obvious flaws. So I'm going to give this movie a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.